Okay, ready to dive in. Chapter 3 of Artificial Empathy. Knowledge to play. This one's a thinker. We're going to be looking at some really interesting stuff, challenging some of the traditional ideas about intelligence, how we learn, and really a more holistic way of thinking.
Yeah, you know what I thought was really fascinating about this chapter is how it starts out right off the bat questioning this idea. Can AI really learn? They use GPT-3 as an example, that language model that can translate English to Latin after just a couple examples. But is that like real understanding or is it just really good mimicry?
Yeah, it's, when you cram for a test and you can spit back all the fact, but do you really get it?
Yeah.
So is GPT-3 just like a master illusionist, or is there something more going on?
Exactly. And the chapter makes this argument that real learning isn't just about recognizing patterns, it's about understanding relationships, cause and effect, like the underlying why. So if you see smoke, you know there's a fire, even if you can't see the fire directly. Because your brain understands that connection. It's not just recognizing the pattern of smoke, it's like understanding that deeper connection.
Yeah, that makes total sense. But how does that relate to play? Because the title of the chapter is Knowledge to Play. So I'm intrigued by that connection.
The chapter dives into this whole idea that play is really, truly essential for learning, especially for humans. Think about how kids are. They just spend hours and hours in these imaginary worlds, and they're experimenting with all these different roles and rules, and they're not just messing around, they're building this really intuitive knowledge through experience. And here's the crazy thing. AlphaZero, you know the AI that mastered Go and chess? It learned through self-play.
Wow.
It generated its own data by playing millions of games against itself, constantly refining its strategies without any human input.
So it learned from scratch.
Yeah.
A kid would.
Totally, yeah, like a kid figuring out a new game.
That's incredible. But the chapter goes on, right? It talks about Shannon information.
And that's where things start to shift away from thinking about information as just bits and bytes.
Okay.
Shannon's theory is important. It's really important for understanding things like data transmission, but it doesn't capture the full picture of meaning and context. It's reading a dictionary definition of a word versus understanding how to use that word in an actual sentence.
So we need to go beyond just the syntax of the information and really get into the semantics, the actual meaning. And that's where semiotics comes in, right? The study of signs and symbols.
Exactly. And the chapter breaks down different types of signs, icons, indexes, symbols, and how they shape how we understand the world.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
I've always been really fascinated by symbols and signs and how they work. So I'm curious to hear what the chapter has to say about them.
One interesting thing is we think about icons like a picture of a cat representing a real cat as the simplest type of sign. But indexes might actually be more fundamental. Indexes are like cause and effect. They're everywhere. Think about a footprint in the sand. You instantly know someone walked there, even though you didn't see them. That footprint, it directly points to the cause, someone walking. That's the essence of an index.
Oh, that's a really cool way to think about it. Those little clues we pick up on without even realizing.
Exactly. And those indexes are such a crucial part of how we make sense of the world,
Yeah,
how we connect the dots, build this picture of reality.
totally. And speaking of making sense of the world, the chapter also talks about how our physical bodies are important. It's not just abstract thought in a vacuum. It's about how we interact with the environment.
Absolutely. That's where the idea of affordances comes in, the possibilities for action that an environment offers. A chair affords sitting, a door affords opening, your phone has all sorts of affordances, tapping, swiping, scrolling. Our brains are constantly evaluating these affordances and guiding our actions, shaping our understanding of the world.
Yeah. So it's like our bodies and the environment are having this constant conversation. They're shaping how we think and learn. So we're not just brains in jars, we're embodied creatures, really connected to the world around us.
Totally, yeah. And that leads to another idea that the chapter explores, this lazy brain hypothesis, that our brains have evolved to conserve energy. By relying on shortcuts and predictions, they're like master illusionists, filling in the gaps in our perception, and only really kicking into high gear when there's a surprise, something unexpected.
Oh, so it's our brains are always taking the easy route. I don't know, like those life hacks we see online.
In a way, yeah. They're looking for the most efficient way to process information, to make decisions. And this actually ties back to the principle of least action in physics.
Wow.
The idea that nature tends to take the path of least resistance.
I love how this chapter is bringing all these like seemingly different ideas together, from AI to physics to how our brains work. It's all part of this big interconnected picture of intelligence.
It is. And this is just laying the groundwork, too. We're going to get even deeper with information emergence and process metaphysics. But we'll save those mind benders for part 2. Okay, so get ready, because now we're going to explore how information itself evolves and gets more complex. It's like climbing a ladder. With each rung, you get a whole new dimension of what information can even be.
I'm ready to climb. We left off with those signs and indexes. Where do we go from there?
So the chapter talks about this idea, information emergence, where information actually gets more intricate and nuanced over time. So imagine a single-celled organism. It reacts to the environment in really basic ways, responding to light and temperature. That's a very basic level of information processing. But as organisms evolve and get more complex, their interaction with the world and each other gets more complex too.
So it's their information vocabulary is expanding. Like they're picking up on more subtle cues and making more sophisticated connections.
Exactly. They start to recognize patterns, make predictions, and they even start to form internal models of their environment. They develop new senses, new ways to communicate, and eventually, even language.
Oh, wow. And with language, things really explode in terms of complexity, right? Suddenly you can share these abstract ideas, build social structures, pass down knowledge across generations. It's like a total game changer.
It is. It's a pivotal moment in the evolution of information. But all this increasing complexity, it comes with new challenges too. The chapter talks about the symbolic grounding problem, the challenge of connecting symbols like words to their actual meanings in the real world.
So it's like, how do we make sure those abstract concepts are actually grounded in real experiences, that our words aren't just floating around in some kind of like mental vacuum?
Exactly. And this is where that emphasis on embodiment that we talked about, it comes full circle. It's through our interaction with the world, our senses, our actions, our emotions, that we ground symbols and give them meaning. We all had those conversations where you're just talking past each other. You're using the same words, but with totally different meanings.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That's the symbolic grounding problem right there.
Meaning isn't just about the words themselves. It's about how those words connect to our actual experiences and actions in the world.
Totally. And the chapter goes on to explore different levels of like self-referential information.
Okay.
So information that is about the self, about like our own internal states and processes.
This is where things get really philosophical.
Yeah.
We're talking about self-awareness, consciousness, all that.
Yeah. We are. So the chapter talks about autonomy, like the awareness of our own agency and self-direction, introspection, the ability to reflect on our own thoughts and feelings, and even the narrative self, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and where we fit in.
It's not just about information from the external world anymore. Now it's about our internal world, our sense of self, our beliefs, motivations. It's getting pretty deep.
It is. It is. And it takes us to another level of complexity, social interactions. Now, information isn't just something we process on our own. It's something we share, something we create together.
Like we develop shared meanings, cultural norms, whole systems of knowledge. Just through those interactions with each other, we're constantly influencing each other, shaping our collective understanding.
Exactly. And here's where the chapter brings in this fascinating idea, memes.
Okay, now I know when most people hear meme, they think of those funny pictures and videos, but I have a feeling you're about to blow my mind with a whole new way of thinking about them.
Oh, right. Because a meme, in this broader sense, is any unit of cultural information. An idea, a belief, a behavior that spreads from person to person. It's like a gene for cultural evolution. Think of a catchy tune that gets stuck in your head, or those sayings that everyone seems to be using.
Yeah.
Those are memes in action.
That's a totally different way of looking at it. So it's these little packets of information that are replicating and evolving within a culture, shaping our understanding of the world.
Totally. It highlights the power of information, not just to shape our minds, but to shape whole societies.
But hold on, because it gets even deeper. The chapter goes on to challenge how we understand reality itself.
Okay, so now we're really getting into the heady stuff.
Yeah, process metaphysics.
This is where things get really abstract.
It is. But it's also really thought-provoking. So process metaphysics challenges that traditional view of reality as a bunch of static objects, and it embraces this more dynamic, process-oriented perspective.
So instead of focusing on fixed categories and definitions, we're looking at relationships, processes that connect everything. It's like seeing the verbs instead of just the nouns.
Yeah. So it's like shifting our attention from the things themselves to the actions and interactions that bring them into being.
Exactly. And that has big implications for how we think about intelligence, about learning, about the fabric of reality itself.
I'm starting to see how it all connects. From the limits of AI to the evolution of information to the nature of reality, it's all about embracing this more holistic, dynamic, interconnected way of seeing the world.
Exactly. And that's what makes this chapter so mind-blowing. It challenges us to question our assumptions about pretty much everything, intelligence, learning, what it means to exist. But we've only just scratched the surface. In part 3, we're going to explore what all this means for understanding our own minds and the future of AI.
Okay, back for the final part of our deep dive into this chapter of artificial empathy. And I gotta say, my mind is still buzzing from all that talk about information and process metaphysics. It's wild how it all connects to this bigger picture of an intelligence, though. Let's bring it all home. What does this whole journey through knowledge to play tell us about ourselves
Yeah.
and the future of AI?
What's really interesting is how this chapter pushes us to rethink this whole idea of what intelligence is. We get stuck in this idea that it's all about logic, like a superpowered calculator. But the chapter's saying, no, it's so much more than that.
It's about like embodiment, interaction, this dance between prediction and surprise. It's not just about passively processing information. It's about actively shaping our understanding of the world.
Exactly. Our brains, they're constantly making predictions, testing them, adapting based on the feedback they get. It's this like dynamic process that's rooted in our evolution and our physical interactions with everything around us.
And it's not just about individual brains either. The chapter makes a big deal about how social interaction and cultural evolution play a role in shaping all this too.
Think about it. Language, tools, art, music, these are all like products of our collective intelligence, passed down, refined over generations. We're constantly building on what came before us.
Like this feedback loop, right, between like our own minds and this collective mind of a culture. We're all shaping it, and it's shaping us. It's all this shared information.
Exactly. And that has a lot of implications for how we think about creating AI, too. If we want it to really understand the world, it can't just be in some digital box. It's got to be able to interact, learn from experience, be a part of this cultural evolution.
It's like taking AI from book smarts to street smart, being able to handle the real world, not just data sets.
Totally. And it ties back to process metaphysics, too. If reality itself is this constant flow, this becoming, then intelligence can't be about reaching some final state of knowledge. It's got to be about adapting, evolving, and creating new knowledge as the world changes.
Oh, that's a really important point. It's about like embracing uncertainty and seeing the creative possibilities in what we don't know yet. It's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly. And I think the big takeaway here is that intelligence isn't just out there waiting to be found. It's something we create on our own and together. As we interact with the world, with each other, it's dynamic, it's embodied, it's always evolving.
That's a really cool thought, right? That we all have a part to play in that evolution, whether we're building AI or just living our lives with that curiosity, that willingness to keep learning.
Absolutely. That's what's so inspiring about this whole chapter. It's not just some fixed ability. It's this creative force that's shaping the future of everything, really. Humanity, technology, everything.